All right, guys, we are back. You're listening to K-Talk Radio, 1640 AM. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. Our special guest today is attorney Jeff Braylio. We're talking about war stories, and man, they've been interesting. They've definitely been interesting.
They're fun. Yeah, yes. I'll have to come back. I've got plenty.
Oh, yes. I'm fascinated by this stuff. I don't know why, but I just love learning.
You love seeing people's agony and misery, and you're a sadist. And
right. You know, if someone's going to go through that mistake, myself included, why not share it, right?
That's
so others
right.
don't.
Yeah, I share. I mean, not only do I do, but when I teach real estate, here are all my mistakes. Here's everywhere that I did something wrong.
Seriously.
You know, learn from me.
Exactly.
And that's really the fun stuff about real estate. You know, especially if it's your profession.
Yes.
You know, it really is a community. It's like, oh my gosh, I totally screwed the pooch on this last week. You've got to hear this. Like,
totally.
I just lost $50,000.
Right.
I want to tell you all about it.
Seriously.
I mean, what other industry do people gloat about losing $50,000?
Exactly.
We're like, this is an incredible situation. You're going to learn so much.
Yes.
And like, it's a $50,000 educational experience, but it's awesome.
Exactly. Seriously, I've shared tons of nightmare stories on this show, and I just hope other people can learn from those that I've experienced what I did. You know, just real quickly here, one of my biggest nightmare stories was supposed to be the easiest fix and flip project I'd ever done. It was like something that was like, oh, this is like almost carpet and paint, like almost, right? I was like, this is going to be super easy. Didn't have a big profit margin, but I was like, it was like 16,000 profit margin. I was like, for as little as I'm going to do, it's worth doing it for 16,000. I normally don't do anything for less than 20. It turned out to be the worst flip I've ever done in my life. I think I lost like 19,000 on it. Everything that could happen happened wrong on it.
Right.
And that was a nightmare story that I never want to go through again. So, awesome.
Okay.
So you've got another one.
Yeah, I've got another one.
Okay.
This is in the world of seller financing.
Okay.
Seller financing is definitely a more advanced real estate investing technique.
Okay.
A lot of investors do it. Most do it incompetently because they don't really know what they're doing. It's actually very easy to get done.
Okay.
But it's difficult to really understand all the nuances and to solve problems and avoid issues and stuff like that.
Got it.
And so if you're going to be involved in a seller financing transaction, in our last program we actually talked about some keys to seller financing.
That's right. And you have a seller financing class.
I have a seller financing class on September 12th.
September 12th. Where can people
go? On our website, which is www.reimasteryu.com, and it's U like university, but it's not a university. I'm legally obligated to tell you this is not a university.
Yes.
I am not associated with any kind of school.
And REI.
It's just the letter U.
right, the letter U. And REI, just for the listeners, stands for real estate investing?
Yep.
Okay.
Real estate investing.
Okay, cool.
Mastery to become a master at real estate investing.
Yep.
And just start there on the homepage. You can get access to information about the seller financing class.
Very cool.
But we're going to bring it up because a lot of sellers do seller financing. And sellers, when they're working with the investor may know what a seller finance transaction is. And it may be a good deal for the seller. And there's situations where seller finance is good for the seller.
Right.
But the sellers aren't educated or informed.
Yeah.
And then there are a lot of buyers, retail buyers, who buy seller finance transactions.
Sure.
Right?
Sure, yeah.
And they're relying on their agent or maybe an investor or someone in the middle to kind of help them through this.
Right.
And the buyers are not experienced in seller financing transactions.
Right.
So here's the story.
Okay.
A client bought a house from a seller with seller financing, which means he actually bought the house. It went to a closing, he got a warranty deed, he took title, he owns the house.
Yes.
But the seller helped finance his purchase. So he didn't have to go out and get a conventional loan, non-owner occupied loan, to buy the house. Mm-hmm. There was an existing mortgage on place with the house that was the seller's mortgage with the bank that they bought the house with.
Got it.
And that was going to stay in place. It's called subject to.
Okay.
Which is completely legal. You can do that.
Yeah.
And then there was what we call an AIT or TD or all-inclusive note and deed.
Okay.
Or wrap note and deed.
Got it.
Where the rest of the purchase price. So let's the numbers don't matter, but let's say the purchase price was $200,000.
Okay.
There's an underlying mortgage the sellers have that's at $150,000 balance.
Okay.
Right. So the sellers want $25,000 down.
Sure.
That's cash at closing.
Yep.
That leaves $175,000 owing to the sellers.
Right.
Right? Now, of that $175,000, $150,000 would need to go to the bank.
Sure.
To pay off the mortgage.
Sure.
But since that mortgage is staying in place,
Yes.
the sellers can actually become lenders.
Right.
And the sellers actually give a mortgage to the buyer for the $175,000. And that $175,000 mortgage is subject to the $150,000.
Got it.
So it's not doubling up or anything. There's just there's sort of one's wrapped around the other.
Gotcha.
And so the buyer owes the seller $175,000, and
Yes.
he's making payments on that. And that's got its own interest rate,
Right.
its own amortization schedule, its own monthly payment, etc., just like any other mortgage.
Right.
And let's say that payment was $1,000.
Yeah.
So that $1,000 goes to the sellers, and then the sellers turn around and use some of that money to pay the monthly payment on the underlying mortgage.
Right.
So let's say that's $750.
Yeah.
And the sellers net $150, $250 a month cash
Sure.
flow.
Yeah.
That's great for sellers.
Absolutely.
Right? Not only do they got their $25,000 down,
Yeah.
because they're helping finance some of the purchase, they're now lenders making interest,
Yep.
and they're making more money.
Yep.
So the sellers are happy. And so he buys the house under this sort of all-inclusive, no need this wrap,
Yeah.
and the underlying mortgage stays in place. So there's 2 mortgages on the house right now.
Got it.
He then actually fixes it up, kind of painting carpet, spruces
Yeah.
it up, and then he turns around and sells it to a
Gotcha.
retail buyer to people who want to live in the house.
Yeah.
And he sells it for $225,000.
Gotcha.
Okay, so he sells the house. He gets a down payment for them of like $10,000.
Yeah.
And then he gives them a mortgage for, and that would be $215,000.
Yes.
So his buyers move in.
Yes.
They own the house.
Okay.
They're making the mortgage payment to him
Yeah.
on the $215,000 loan.
Okay.
He's taking some of that monthly payment. He's paying the sellers on his wrap mortgage.
Yes.
And then the sellers are using his payment to pay their underlying mortgage.
Gotcha.
There's basically 3 mortgages
Yes.
on the house.
Yes.
Retail buyers to investor.
Yes.
Investor to seller. Seller to bank.
Got it.
Okay. Now that's a lot of transactional processing,
Yeah.
checks and stuff.
Yeah.
So they used an escrow company. There are escrow companies out there who will facilitate and act as a kind of a loan servicer
Got
on
it.
these things.
Yes.
So everything was set up with this escrow company. The escrow company received the monthly check from the buyers.
Okay.
Totally fine. They made every payment
Yes.
on time.
Yes.
Right? Then what happened was, and for the first year and a half, the escrow company then paid my client his little extra.
Yep.
They paid the sellers their little extra.
Yep.
And then they made the payment to the underlying mortgage bank. So they
Gotcha.
kind of split up the money and
Yes.
gave it to all the parties.
Got it.
And it worked fine for about 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
Then for some reason the escrow company stopped making the payments to the underlying mortgage.
Huh. No.
So they received the money.
Yeah.
They had the money to pay everybody,
Yeah.
but for some reason they just stopped.
Wow.
Whether they forgot, they said they had instructions from my client telling them to stop making payments, which of course never happened.
Yeah.
So they stopped making payments. Nobody caught this for about 6 months.
Oh no.
And the reason it got caught was because no one was making payments to the mortgage bank.
So notice
Right.
a default.
So there's a notice of default. When the bank put the notice of default on, they saw the house had sold.
Got it.
So not only was there a notice of default saying the mortgage is in default, and which if in default you can bring it current,
Yeah.
right? When a house mortgage goes into default, you usually have at least 90 days
Yeah.
to get caught up and
Right.
pull it out of default and go on.
Yeah. Keep
But
living there.
because when they started the foreclosure process, they saw that the house had also sold.
Oh,
They
no.
called in the due on sale clause
Got
and
it.
said, "We're not foreclosing based on default of the mortgage.
Yeah.
We want you to pay the note in full in 30 days, or we're going to foreclose on that," which does
Right.
not give anybody the ability to bring it current.
Right.
And the bank was not interested in it being brought current.
Right.
So there's no hope of bringing it current anymore.
Oh no.
So now you got a situation where the seller's credit score
Yeah.
has been dinged because
Yeah.
there's 6 months of late payments.
Oh my gosh.
You've got, and they're very angry.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
You got the retail buyers who've been making payments on a house they're living in.
Yeah.
That suddenly they were at risk of losing.
Yeah.
And my client, the investor, sitting in the middle,
Right.
being sued by the sellers and his buyers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When this was all the escrow company's fault.
Right.
The lucky part of the story is the bank foreclosure was a local bank. The retail buyers, they weren't ready to buy yet.
Got it.
And that's why they were really upset.
Right.
You know, they had a couple more years to refinance the house.
Yes.
They were repairing credit and building up some down payment and stuff like that.
Right.
And so, but they were able to finally actually get a loan because they didn't want to lose the house.
Got it.
So they were able to get a loan, which then when they got a loan, it did cash kind of everybody out and clean everything up.
Got it.
But you saw a situation with the sellers.
Yeah.
The credit score was damaged.
Right.
And, and so there was a lawsuit and he ended up paying damages to the sellers.
Got it.
And then he sued the escrow company, and that settled and got kind of paid back. At the end of the day, he did end up, I think, making some money on it, but not a lot.
Got it, yeah.
And the kind of the moral of the story is, one, if you're a retail seller or buyer in a seller finance transaction, you should really have your own legal counsel.
Yeah.
Don't rely on your real estate agent. Don't rely on the investor that might be, selling a house or anybody else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Your title company, your real estate agent, your specialist. These people aren't going to know how these things are structured and dealt with. Every buyer and seller in a seller finance transaction, I really should have a lawyer at least go, okay, here's how this works.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's what you need, and here's what you need to do moving forward so that everything stays good.
Right.
I had my client kept track, had he looked, go online and look at the mortgage, and if after 1 month it wasn't paid, he could have jumped in and probably saved everything.
Right.
But we rely on third parties, we rely on other people,
for
their expertise, and if this is your house, as a buyer or seller or investor, this is your asset, it's your value, it's your home, you need to take responsibility.
Exactly.
And yes, hire qualified people, do your own due diligence. If you have questions, run them by legal counsel, run them by your CPA or accounting professional, because another thing with seller financing is these sellers that finance part of the purchase price and they're making this interest, right?
Yeah.
That's taxable income.
Right.
And they may not realize that.
Right.
They might, oh cool, I'm getting this extra $200 every month.
Right.
But it's income and they have to claim it. If they don't claim it and it's an audit, then the auditors are going to look at the buyer. Yeah. Who's claiming that as an interest deduction.
Right. Right.
And now they're in an audit. So, not understanding these transactions is very, very risky.
Got it. Yes.
And so be very careful and, make sure your own counsel and legal advice from your own professionals.
Yes. And that had a lot of pieces to the puzzle.
Oh, a lot of pieces. Yes. And there's actually more. There was actually a solar panel lien.
Oh.
And that's a big, a lot of people put solar panels on their homes.
Yeah.
Right? And they're essentially borrowing the money.
Right.
To buy and install the solar panels. And the solar company puts a lien on the property.
Got it.
And then 3 years later, the sellers decide to sell the house. And they don't realize that lien is going to affect their new buyers. Because it's a lien. You can't get rid of it unless you pay it off in full.
Right.
And so that's becoming an issue that I think people should be aware of.
Right.
But there was the first mortgage, there was this solar panel lien. So there were actually two liens, and my client wrapped both of those.
Got it.
Then his wrap was a third. He then had a rehab loan, which was technically in fourth place.
Got it. So
that was a fourth loan. And then the all-inclusive loan to the retail buyer. So it's technically five.
Wow.
Technically five.
Wow.
But the ones that I explained in the example, the underlying mortgage, that was the important one. Because if the sellers aren't getting paid, they're not going to go report to credit bureaus.
Right.
They might get mad and say, hey, what's going on? Why aren't we getting our money?
Yeah.
But they're not going to cause any problems beyond that.
Exactly.
But when that underlying mortgage didn't get paid, now you've got a foreclosure and a due on sale clause in the bank coming after the property. And that you can't stop.
Yeah. Wow, that's insane. And simple for those listeners out there who are, maybe in this situation, not this exact situation, but in the situation that you are buying or selling a seller finance transaction, maybe you've already bought or sold a seller transaction, you haven't refinanced out of it yet, and you're wondering, oh my gosh, how do I make sure that the payment I'm making is getting paid? You can typically log online. Just go and check whether it's the mortgager's website, Zions Bank directly, Citi, Bank of America, Citibank, whoever it might be. You can go online the seller could set up a username and password for you, and you can go check to see that. Yeah, it's getting paid. Whether you're making the payment directly to the seller, which I don't recommend, I would make it to the escrow company, like Jeff is talking about, a third party, to make sure it's getting paid. Well, to make sure it's getting paid. In this case, it didn't.
Yeah.
But you can make sure that they're getting, paying it. But it's nice to give it to a third party versus directly to the seller. I have seen where people have given it directly to the seller, and then the seller stopped making payments and kept all the money, and then got foreclosed.
Yeah.
And then the buyer lost the house because the original...
The seller's gone.
Yeah, seller's gone. So that's why this particular investor that Jeff shared used an escrow company. Unfortunately, there was just that little hiccup.
Yeah, and it was, mistakes happen.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I don't think there's anything nefarious, and it wasn't.
Yeah,
it was just somehow some probably box got unchecked.
Yeah,
that stopped the payments from being made.
Exactly.
Somehow. And so, but yeah, it is you. These are your assets. A house is is for most Americans.
Yeah.
Their only asset.
Exactly.
It's certainly their biggest asset.
Absolutely.
And for many, it's their retirement.
Yeah.
It's how they're going to live in their golden years.
Yep.
And so these are things that you need to pay attention to.
Wonderful.
And need to protect and use good people and hire good people and rely on professionals. And at the end of the day, you keep an eye on things.
Yes, yes. Well, Jeff, we are at the end of our show. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing legal war stories.
Yes. You got to come up with a better name. Well, next time we'll have a better name for that.
Awesome. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the show today, and I hope everybody has a spectacular rest of the weekend.